The sponsor of this episode of Decoding Multifamily is Chadwell Supply, an OG in the multifamily industry. Chadwell is the largest privately owned maintenance and repair supplier, and they deliver orders the next day from local warehouses across the United States. To find out how Chadwell Supply will make your day better, visit chadwellsupply.com/difference.
Welcome to Decoding Multifamily, a video podcast that explores different aspects of multifamily operations and takes a deep dive into the important topics that affect the apartment industry. Watch as co-hosts Suzanne Hopson and Paul Marks engage with multifamily thought leaders, rising multifamily superstars, and apartment industry icons. Decoding is defined as the process of extracting meaningful and useful information. So watch closely as we begin Decoding Multifamily.
Welcome to Decoding Multifamily, powered by the Multifamily Media Network. The Multifamily Media Network is a free media platform on a mission to inspire the next generation of multifamily leaders. With 11 different weekly podcasts from a roster of hosts who are not only multifamily experts, but also icons, we bring you the latest insights, trends, and success stories from the multifamily world. Stay informed on each unique podcast and catch up on the latest episodes by visiting multifamilymedianetwork.com. Plus, don't miss out on our educational and inspiring multifamily blogs. Tune in, get inspired, and transform your multifamily journey with us. So again, welcome to Decoding Multifamily. I've got with me my fantastic co-host, Suzanne Hopson, and we have our special guest with us today. Suzanne, why don't you introduce our guest?
Thank you, Paul, and welcome. Ian Bingham, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Really good. We are so excited to have you on the podcast today. I think this is going to be great. I would like to just inform our audience out there, in case they don't know about you, which would be quite surprising, a little bit about you. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. So you currently serve as the Senior Vice President of Business Development at Buckingham. And we know that Buckingham is one of the leading real estate firms known for its innovative approach and transformational projects. With a strategic vision and a wealth of industry experience, you've spearheaded initiatives that drive growth and foster strong partnerships. Your leadership has been wonderful in leading your people to expand the Buckingham portfolio, enhancing also community impact, and delivering exceptional value to your stakeholders. Your dedication, excellence, and forward-thinking strategies are all about the future of real estate development, and we can't wait to hear more about what you've been up to.
Thank you. That's a heck of an introduction.
Well, and I know that we have been in the same sphere, sort of circling each other for, I won't say how many years, but it has been wonderful to see your trajectory and where you are today. I know a lot of folks over at Buckingham, and I love that company. I think it's awesome. And you're doing some different things for them than what they have traditionally done. So I hope to get into that a little bit as well. So If you're ready, let's jump right in. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
So let's go back just a little bit. I don't want to talk about business quite yet. This is about you. And this is really about what got you into the business in the first place.
I think if you ask anyone in the industry, you'd find very few people that said, I just couldn't wait to get into multifamily. Right. And so I'm certainly in that group. I in the late 90s had transitioned out of the active army into the National Guard. And I was living in the greater Chicagoland area and needed to figure out what was next. And so I ended up taking, call it a sales and leasing position with Village Green. Again, this is 1999. I'm working on a value add. I don't think we called them that back then, by the way. between Village Green and AEW in suburban Chicago. So that kind of, I guess, gave me the first taste and an understanding of not just the resident and customer experience, but also, seeing behind the veil and how multifamily and commercial real estate investment works, and it's come off to the races from there.
Neat. Yeah, I think every single guest we've had has said that they've just fallen into it. That has not changed much. It is interesting to what they fell into. And to that point, what a great training ground.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I will say, and not my personal experience, but it is exciting to watch universities like Ball State and San Diego State start to have specific programs geared toward our industry. And I'd really love to see more universities do that. Have a few friends that guest lecture at those, and I think it's really fantastic to watch people actually grow toward a career in this industry as opposed to what was a happenstance in the past.
Yes, yeah, for sure. I know that, some of what I do these days is outside of the multifamily industry space. And it's interesting how many of those skill sets are transferable. It's just a great way to find out how to run a business, whether you're in sales or management or whatever. You get to learn all about it, how to manage the budget, all of it, right?
Definitely, yeah. And kind of talking about the evolution of my career, going up those scales, so my time at Village Green literally started from working in an office to, at the peak of the operations side of my career, which was about half of my career, overseeing over 20,000 units in 5 or 6 states. And to your point, we look at it today and we'll go down some weird rabbit holes in the conversation. But, sometimes when you're working with third parties or even within your own organization, you start to try to have to justify certain positions and payrolls. And if we look at this in the way that we should, our property managers are managing on the conservative side a $25 million, on the aggressive side a $200 million asset. And you look at the P&L for that property and you go, no, this has to be a heck of a business manager. We're not just talking about getting good online reviews and taking care of the site team. And the residents. This is a very large business that we're entrusting to our teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually spoke with someone yesterday about this very topic because we're kind of swaying around in our industry, right? To go down one of those rabbit holes. There's a lot of focus on, taking what the property manager does and sort of stripping off some of the administrative tasks. And then there's an opposite thought process, which is if you really hire a great property manager, they're going to be able to run the business like an owner. What are your thoughts about that?
I think there's a happy medium. I don't think we've found it yet. There is so much technology out there. We've got some conferences coming up. I was just joking with a friend of mine earlier that I'm getting somewhere in the ballpark of 25 to 40 emails a day, asking for 15 minutes of my time. And the reality to that, though, is there is companies I've never heard of, and some of them, although I may not be able to carve out that 15 minutes, I'm clicking in to try to see, what is new and the latest and greatest. And the reality is, I think that a lot of these technologies are here to stay. I think we need to figure out how to adapt and use them in a way that best suits the business. I don't think that we're going to magically introduce all these technologies and the headcount's going to shrink by half. I don't think that's where we're headed. I do think that there's ways to work smarter, not harder, and more efficiently. And that's something that we do need to lean into. Maybe 5, 6 years ago, there was a lot of disjointed tech, right? So a lot of silos for a lot of great things, but you have site teams that were logging into 10 different systems to do their job. And you start to look at, well, what's the effect on that? There's burnout, there's time loss. And so did we create an efficiency? Did we create a task that someone is probably doing haphazardly to get through it, as opposed to utilizing it for the betterment of the asset? So we'll get there. But there's, I think, a training curve and really realizing best uses with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. And similarly, I think I'm totally in alignment with you. But there's another thing that I've been thinking about, which is, it's different at every company. The way that they use technology and the tech stack, it's different. There's not really a lot of companies that I've seen that are similar. And so that becomes hard to duplicate well, I think. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, you've been in several companies, and so do you think that that's true when we talk about our technology, or do you think we're finding more of what's going to work?
I think it really is. Yeah, the cost.
Loaded
I think
question. No.
it's company by company. Some are doing it really well. Some of it probably have further to go. And then, you look at some of the large, and I'll say probably, in the top 10 category, and maybe even deeper down the chain of the MHC list, and by necessity or by default, with the best intentions, they want to have a singular stack and run it a certain way. But if you're in a third-party management business and a large institution comes along and says, "Yeah, we're going to give you these 10,000, these 20,000 units, but you're going to use this tech, this tech, and this tech," you're probably going to put your business hat up and go, "It behooves us to support this." And so now we're going to run dual stack. And so to that degree, I think on necessity, there will be companies that will continue to run multiple concurrent processes with different groups because that's how you grow the business. I think in the ideal world, and certainly as I try to grow our business, I would love for everyone to stay within the same sphere. A lot easier sport, a lot easier to leverage pricing and all those things that we know that come with that. But there's also a reality to a lot of this stuff might not be one size fits all. And you might have to do some different solutions for different property classes, different geography, all the things that weigh into our industry.
Yeah, I think you just gave a much broader sort of view into some of the challenges, big or small. And then, yeah, that's great. I appreciate that so much. So let's take another little decoding of you because you're a leader and you've continued to succeed in your career. What is it about the person that needs to be really good at what to become an effective leader? Like, what are some of your personal things that you've adopted or adapted to or are part of you? And what do you think you like to see in the leaders that are coming up?
So I'll use an old Army adage, and that is mission first, people always.
Like that.
And it really comes down to understanding the objectives and driving teams. That understanding that the key part of that statement is the teams. And understanding what makes the people tick and knowing that that's going to be different from person to person. And then figuring out how to pull them forward to achieve, the common goal. And I think that comes from a myriad of places. I think, when we look back at our industry, going back to the beginning of our conversation, if you were to look, I would say probably the vast majority didn't have a college education or had some. I think if we look at that today, that has skewed quite a bit, at least on the office side. But when we look at kind of the expectation of our people, that has changed quite a bit too. When we conduct interviews now, I would say when I was, in my early 20s, the interview was probably 80% getting asked questions and 20% at the end, me trying to throw in a few what ifs and how abouts. And now it's almost a 50-50. People are vetting us as an employer just as much as we're vetting them as an employee. And I think that give and take is probably a great thing. We all talk about the buzzword, which is culture. But I think there's really something to that. Because if someone, has a different vision for their career and their path than you do, they're probably not going to be a great fit. You're not going to get what you need out of them and vice versa. So, I think for me, it really comes down to people. And then you can kind of further segment that into what makes a successful asset or a successful company. And that's the 4 Ps, right? It's people, product, price, promotion. Like, if you can get those 4 right, or at least dial them into a point where everyone's rowing in the same direction, you're going to have a successful asset.
Yeah, well, that's great. And the leadership component of that, I want to dive into just a little bit more. I'm hearing you speak really to the military as one of your shapers. Would you say that that's the case?
Yeah, definitely. I look back, I enlisted young. I literally had to have my mom sign a waiver. I was 17 years old, and had no clue what I was going to do in the world. And so, yeah, I think that, that was instrumental in kind of shaping some of my thought processes, and a lot that I still lean on today, and some lifelong friendships that maybe are in different industries, but I still, have conversations with them about leadership and about, just different ways to motivate people. There's tactics that you don't use because the military certainly can mold clay in a different facet. But no, I think a lot of the ways that I learned to lead, and a lot of it's leading from the front. When I was more in the field, so to speak, with teams, I like to interview regionals, property managers on site. Come to corporate office and say, let me bring out some of the sites that you're going to oversee. And if they would walk around and I would see them picking up trash on our walk, they weren't an employee yet, but they would see some debris and they're going to pick it up, and I'm going, okay, this person has learned good traits along the way in their career because they're thinking about the curb appeal of the property. They're no one's above it mentality. Things like that really resonate with me. And so, the lack of rank and again the ambition of the individual to be successful, knowing that do whatever it takes is kind of the mentality is something that has always impressed me. And I think that if someone has that view at the beginning of their career, they're going to go really far.
It almost reminds me of, in you saying that, it's an entrepreneur sort of mindset, which is I start as one, I then am two, then am five, and I have to sit in so many different seats until we get, to that size. And you're right, you can't have the mentality that that's below you, beneath you, or not your job. So yeah, that's the one for me. That's not my job. Yeah. So on that note, what we've been talking about, this is kind of off the, like, going down another rabbit hole, but I'm really interested in your take on this. And it's really about, the regional level and that, what I call them as emerging leaders. Um, are you seeing, and this is what I'm seeing, I just want to say what you see, that there's a gap in, like, the training of that group, and if they are getting promoted from the site level into regional level. I mean, what has your experience been with that? And do you think we're heading in the right direction there, like recognizing it and doing something about it?
I think we're getting back on track, and I'll let me qualify that statement. So, I've been through a few cycles, as I think all three of us probably have, and so, as this last cycle ramped up, call it 2015, 2016, we were moving so quickly. We were developing assets at just a breakneck pace, and we were closing on not properties but portfolios, right? And so you got to grow your company quick, and you have to have that coverage. And that's not to say that you put warm bodies. You probably put qualified people in some cases that weren't quite ready yet. And so when I say we're catching up, I think now that we've had a bit of a lull, that deliveries are still going to be at an all-time high this year. And then if we're to believe everything I do, that they're going to fall off a cliff based on permitting, we're going to have that lull. Transactional volume is certainly down, and no one can debate that. And so, I think in many cases, many companies have gone back and taken that time, especially as performance lags. Everyone has to sharpen the pencil. Everyone has to get better at their job. And so this downtime has taken it where kind of the high tide has raised all ships, and forced us to be better at our jobs, and in some cases forced us to go back and find the blind spots of people that were maybe quickly promoted. So we're getting there. I think as I look specifically at Buckingham, both the hiring and vetting process as well as the internal promotion process is pretty comprehensive. Really good training and education. I think, again, as we were moving real quick, what was the best way to train them? Send them the online module and make sure that they take their classes every quarter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can learn some stuff from that, but you can also click through, answer what you think is right, and go, oh, I got a 70%. I'll just retake it until I get an 80 and pass it. Right. And no one's the wiser. So, I think, that hands-on approach is kind of the difference maker. And we're testing out.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we're approaching training in general differently than we have before. We have many, different generations and doing the same work. And so, we're having to come up with solutions that really appeal to all of them. I like them shorter. I like them with gamification, whatever that is. But to your point and the reason for the question, I think it's almost like lifting the lid, right? And now because of the markets and what's been going on, we're really getting back to process and training and people. And yeah, I can see the opportunity in what's happening right now for sure. Do you agree with that? I mean, there is some.
Chadwell Supply is the proud sponsor of the Multifamily Media Network. Chadwell Supply is the largest privately owned MRO supply company and is committed to the multifamily industry. They deliver orders the next day from local warehouses across the United States. Chadwell Supply offers valuable resources such as maintenance training, a dedicated renovations team, and procurement platform assistance, ensuring multifamily properties operate more efficiently. Partnering with Chadwell Supply helps communities stand out in an increasingly competitive market. Learn more at chadwellsupply.com/difference.
No, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest areas that tends to be, and I hate to put with a broad brush because, everyone's different, but one of the areas that if I were to say what was the consistent kind of lead in what's the talent with training, it was financial acumen, right? I think a lot of our regional positions, yes, they knew how to read their financial statements, and yes, we can get a variance report from those folks. But really driving performance through understanding the financials is something that in the last 2 years, because the financials maybe didn't look as great as they used to, everyone has had to dig deeper. And so they're now getting time, a lot more meaningful time. Maybe it's via education, maybe it's via the School of Hard Knocks, but the asset managers are really digging in line by line, and that's an education too. And so I think that's one of the biggest catch-up areas that I'm seeing in kind of that regional role.
Yeah, good stuff. So let's talk little bit about your role. Let's talk a lot about your role at your current company at Buckingham. So you came on board. How long ago was it? And what exactly are you doing? What are you up to?
Almost a year ago, I came on late last summer. And Buckingham is kind of making what I would call a pretty landmark transition shift. And that is for 40 years, they were an owner and a developer, and they managed their own assets. And last year, as an executive leader team, it was decided, hey, this third party thing, we should really take a deeper look. And so I've had friends at the firm, so to speak, for years. Always a firm that I had a great deal of respect for. Never thought I'd be working for a Midwest company again. I sit in Tampa now. I live in Chicago for over 2 decades. But I've really traveled kind of 2 days a week for the last decade. So that was a little less important. But, being with a company that had a similar vision to me, and that is really being able to not just for lack of a better term, babysit the asset, but really drive performance and really get granular and manage it in the same exact way that you would if you owned it. I think is sometimes in fee management become a bit of a lost art. And so, that was the vision. I can tell you since joining Buckingham, we've actually turned down more business than we've taken on.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that is the direct, again, Brad Chambers and Christy and the team really looking at it and going, who do we want to be? What do we want to represent? And and that is making sure that it's stuff that our team can manage effectively. It's geographies that we can get to easily. And it's working with owners that share a similar vision. And that's not necessarily the software question, but it's, I dig deep. I ask how the property is financed and how the equity is derived, and really want to ask all the questions, especially in an economic downturn period, to make sure that we're aligning ourselves with people that are positioned to make it through a down period and allow us to help them properly and be successful. So it's been great for this first year. We've had some big wins, and I've been able to use some of the other hats that I've had in my career, working in development and acquisitions as well as operations, to pitch in on a lot more than just the third party side. So I sit and assist with our asset management team from time to time, and I'm certainly keyed in with almost everything in the operations team. Some of that in a peer role and some of that in a mentor role, but making sure that, again, we are who we say we are, and that our own assets and our third party assets are all getting the same attention, the same level of expertise.
It's really the owner mentality, even if it's a third party, situation. And I think you're right. The vetting of that and the just that process. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on with people's assets and why they're looking, and it varies. And your ability to be able to serve that is you have to pick and choose based on core value alignment, all of it. So yeah, but it's good to hear that there's still opportunities that are happening in the down market. And I know Paul and I have listened to many conversations, and depending on geography, really, it's been, would you say that, Paul? I mean, what are your thoughts on how this is affected?
That's one of the questions I've got. But before I ask that question, very impressive in that you guys are turning down business. And Suzanne, I'm sure you would agree with this. There's not many companies that have the courage to do that, and they're going to take anything they can get, and with that comes a lot of issues that end up cropping up later. I've heard horror stories over the years where people have taken on third party management with owners, and the core values didn't align, and it causes issues. So that's impressive to me.
No, I appreciate that. And some of those issues, it goes back to what I was saying with people. If you want to drive higher turnover and really kind of fumble the ball, steer away from your core values for the quick buck. And you lose that authentic relationship that you have with your associates because you kind of spit in the face of what you said you were. So
absolutely,
we really try to live it.
Yeah. So getting back to the geographic question, and for the benefit of our audience who's not familiar with Buckingham, tell us a little bit about the portfolio, number of units, what geographic areas is your footprint where you have properties or managed properties?
Sure. So we're just north of 17,000 units. Midwest-based, so an Indianapolis-based company, but we're all over the Midwest. So, call that Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, down through Kentucky, Tennessee. We have assets in Atlanta. We're also in Raleigh, and believe it or not, in Colorado.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then coming soon, you'll see a larger presence in Texas. And part of my entering the company is to go to the Southeast more. Obviously, being in the Carolinas and being in Georgia, we see a lot of opportunity in Florida. There's a lot of hurdles in Florida too. On the third party side, it's super saturated. Everyone's here, and that's okay. We'll put our hat in that ring. But I think when you look at the transactional volume, real estate insurance being double to triple what it was 5 to 7 years ago, some tax uncertainty, and rents in the vast majority of the markets flat or declining slightly, creates for a hard to grow environment. In the same way that the Midwest was probably slower to grow 3 to 5 years ago when the South was getting 25% increases. We're seeing stable occupancies with stable rent growth in the Midwest. So, that's where we're having a lot of our wins. But I will tell you, the last 3 assets that we picked up were Texas and Georgia. So there's growth there too.
Yeah, and I'm just a quick follow up on that. What would you say is there a specialty of the types of properties, either the class properties that you guys work with, or is it all a traditional market rate, or do you enter the affordable or the student housing game at all?
Sure. We're traditionally going to be market rate A and B. We've done a ton of lease up. We've done high rise, mid rise garden. We've done a lot of value add. Really, how the company was founded and then started developing, which I think is a pretty familiar story in the industry. We also have what's called Buckingham Foundation, which is a self-sufficient. I might get the charitable 501(c)(3), is that right?
Yep.
So that group of assets does have an affordable component to it, which we do manage in house, and then the profits of those properties are actually redistributed through grants within the communities that the properties exist in, or utilized to purchase more affordable and attainable housing. So we do have that. Let's call it an internal silo. But yeah, the bread and butter is going to be market rate and value add through lease up.
Great. We've got about 8 minutes left, Suzanne.
Okay, let's go back to you again, Ian, before we close out. Let's talk about some of the challenges you've had. Can you name anything in your career where you just were up against something tough, and how did you get through it?
Yeah, not to be redundant, but going back to some of the biggest career struggles, I think I look back to, call it challenging owners and clients. And it really can create a whirlwind. I would never name anyone by name, but I think back to a portfolio in the Southeast where, as a third-party manager, we were really excited to onboard a whole bunch of units. And you quickly learn that not everyone shares the vision. And so when you have a property that's aging payables, and not necessarily caring for the property in the same manner that you would, it affects everyone. It affects the residents, because now you got, we can't fix this in your apartment. We're waiting for parts. Well, waiting for parts is code for we're trying to find a vendor who will actually sell it to us. We alienated someone else. Your managers and your maintenance team and everyone up and down the site level is just taking that beating, because it's not a secret when a property is cash strapped, and it happens. That sometimes it's a condition of what we do, but sometimes it's part of someone's business plan. And I think when I look back, some of the biggest struggles I had, it was managing through those, having Paul, to kind of go back to you, the courage to part ways with a client, right? Someone's paying you, 6 figures per asset to manage these things, and as a leader saying, what, we're better off without, and we got to cut ties. It's probably one of the biggest hurdles that I've encountered in my career.
Yeah.
Outside of 08 and 09 and the down center.
Right.
Yeah.
Where we were all in.
But we've talked about this with some of our other guests. There's a lot of people in our industry who only know the good times because they're young enough they didn't go through that cycle. So they're kind of getting a taste of it right now.
And this comes up a lot. This comes up a lot in panels. I think that this slowdown is certainly not,
right.
08. There are some parodies that can be drawn, especially for someone who maybe bought that deal, at a 3.5 cap in early 2022.
Right.
Right. But there is so that's a segment of the market. I think, a lot more of what we're seeing is just a pause of uncertainty, coupled with people who can't sell because they probably got a fantastic rate. Unless you're going to sell that assumable debt away, it's the same reason that I won't sell the house that I'm living in, right? When you got a sub 3% mortgage, it doesn't matter how great you think you can trade up into to go to a 7% loan, right?
Right.
So I think part of why we're not seeing the transactional volume isn't necessarily distressed debt, but it's I can't get better returns if I trade out of this. And so eventually we will see that loosen up. I've been in the industry for over 25 years now. I certainly saw buying, selling, developing in a 7 or 8% debt environment. It's not insurmountable. We're finally starting to dial in that bid-ask spread, and I think, I just got off not to give them a free plug, but the NMHC quarterly, legislative call, and so that was all predicated around what we think will happen in November, and not just presidential elections, but the House and the Senate, and how that will affect all different kind of policies that touch us, from everything from ancillary fees to regulatory issues, and I think that's probably the next what happens for our industry as opposed to a rate hike or reduction, because those kind of come in a quarter at a time, and I don't think that's going to move anyone's needle substantially. It's going to be some of these other big decisions.
Yeah. Well, that sounds positive, right? And I think for our listeners that, I think that is, and to Paul's point, the ones that haven't been through multiple cycles, it's good to hear that. It's a positive. So I think just one last question. Is that okay, Paul?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So again, about leadership, about your success, where you are today, what you're doing today. What do you say to the people getting into the business to help them get to the next level, if that's their pursuit?
Be a sponge. There is something to learn from everyone. I look back at my career and where it started, and there's names. I don't think he's in the industry anymore, but I had a service manager. His name was Kevin Murphy, and I'll never forget Kevin because he taught me more about facilities than I ever needed to know. But now when I have a conversation with someone in construction or someone, on the facility side of the operations team, I'm going to say 95% of the time I know what they're talking about. And that's because he would force me to leave the office and come see what the maintenance team was doing and understand that. And so, there's no one position where you're going to learn it all. Try to learn from everyone. Try to learn from your suppliers. There's so many moving pieces to this industry. But if you can be a sponge, I think you're going to position yourself well to excel in kind of any one of the paths that you choose.
That's
great advice.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
So Ian, let our audience know if someone wants to reach out to you, get in touch with you to bend your ear, find out a little bit more or about Buckingham. How can they do that?
Yeah, definitely. Email's always good. Ian.Bingham@buckingham.com. If you're always on your phone like me, just go on LinkedIn, search Ian Bingham. I think me and two call it British guys that are still on the island will show up. So I'm pretty easy to find. And follow me there.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on Decoding Multifamily. We are going to be back again soon with our next episode of Decoding Multifamily, which is powered by the Multifamily Media Network. Go to multifamilymedianetwork.com to find out more about not only this podcast, but other great podcasts from our roster of all-star multifamily icons. So it's multifamilymedianetwork.com. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Suzanne. And we'll be back again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Decoding Multifamily video podcast, and please tune in to future episodes. If you would like to subscribe to our weekly newsletter or discuss being a podcast guest on Decoding Multifamily, please go to multifamilymedianetwork.com. Thank you for watching Decoding Multifamily.